church.
Morning.
It's an amazing honor and privilege to be speaking before you today.
Okay.
I do not lead the church. I want you guys calling me Pastor Holder. However, I am a leader in the church, amen. And I have a message for you this morning, which I believe will help your heart.
Come on.
Please turn with me to Philippians chapter 2.
Come on.
Come on, bro.
Come on, Marvell.
In Philippians chapter 2, in verse 1, it says, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose, doing nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should not look only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus.
Okay.
You know, this is a great passage. It talks about a lot of things. You know, Jay is really good about teaching, like, it's pretty much two things I found it's a trend.
Come on.
He teaches faith and unity.
There it
And
is.
that's really everything. It's like everything has to do with either faith and unity, and most of the time it's both.
Right.
And right here he's giving us a little bit of encouragement. It says, it talks about tenderness. You know, that's not something you would really give a descriptive for a brother. Oh, that's a tender brother. Oh, tenderoni. Tenderness, compassion, support, comfort, fellowship,
Obedience.
love, purpose. But one thing I think that's the most striking about the entire passage is it says, your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus.
Come on.
That's most profound. Because one thing I've learned from Jay is that, like, he's really intuitive. So you can be, everybody can be together in the same room, doing the same thing, have on same shirts, dressed alike, and yet not be unified.
Well, come on.
Because they don't have the same spirit. Because they don't have the same attitude. And right here it says, your attitude needs to be like Jesus Christ. It doesn't just say it should be just a little like it. It needs to be the same. And this is essential because attitudes come from the heart.
Come on.
So when it says you need to have the same attitude of Jesus, it's also calling us to have the same heart as Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Come
You know,
on.
we could say that we have the same commitment as Jesus Christ. But can you honestly say you have the same heart as Jesus Christ?
Come on.
You see, bad attitudes come out of a bad heart.
Come on.
The title of my lesson this morning is the power of a bad attitude.
Come on, bro.
The first point is the danger of a bad attitude. In Philippians chapter 1 and verse 27. You guys still with me here?
Yeah.
All right. It says in verse 27 in chapter 1, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I know that you stand firm in one spirit, contending as one man for the faith of the gospel, without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but that you will be saved, and that by God. This is a great passage. It says right here, whatever happens. So it doesn't really like say, if, you know, because your circumstances are a little different. There's a different an exception for you. You're exempt. No, it says whatever.
Yep.
So, I mean, you know, we can be unique in our struggles that no one else can really relate. But the Bible makes a blanket statement so that it will cover everyone.
Come on.
It says, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Well, what is that saying? That's saying that your attitude and the way you do things needs to be in a manner worthy of the gospel.
Yep.
So what that's saying is like how we react and respond to things, is it worthy of the gospel?
Come on.
That means if we were sitting around and we were the scribes and the scholars who were gathering all of the teachings of the apostles, and we were sitting back and we were looking at people that were just in the faith, we would say, okay, you know what? That's worth writing about in the Bible. The way you're acting and the things that you do and how you do them, are they worth being recorded to inspire someone else and give them faith?
Come on, baby.
Do the way we act, would it give somebody faith? Or would they just say, well, that was hard, I understand. See, because Jesus did things very different. People were shocked, like, you still love him? You know, it's very interesting. He gave all of his apostles bread and told them, this is my body. And yet, in the same moment, he tells them, but one of you will betray me. So the funny thing is before he revealed to them, someone will betray me and says, it is you. Before he reveals it to everybody, he tells them, here's my body, share it. So he was willing to still entrust himself to him, even though he knew he was going to hurt him.
Yeah. Wow.
Are we willing to do the same thing?
Come on.
No, there's some things that I've learned about an attitude. I did not grow up with the greatest examples of this. Right? I come from a family, we're all loud. Right? We like to be known. Right? I mean, I feel like I've grown in this, but I may not have. When I was the one in the class, my teacher used to say, Marvell. I used to be like, oh, what? She used to say, you hear how I'm speaking? I said, yeah. She's like, no, use your inside voice. I was like, okay. I told that to my mom one time. I was like, Mom. My mom used to, she wasn't a speaker, she was a yeller. She used to say, y'all need to clean up this house. Get up, you're sleeping too late. You know? And I one time told her, Mom, yes, and my mom was like, son, I'll run this house. You're inside my house. This is my inside voice. You don't like this voice, then you can go outside. Me being a kid, I'm like, okay. I just walked outside, stayed outside all day. And then when she told me to come in, I was like, well, Mama, you told me to go outside. It was bad. The thing is, what I've learned about attitudes is they will strike fear in an individual. Yeah. Like, it will literally have someone stricken with fear. The funny thing is, people with attitudes are like, keep it real. What I'm doing right now, I ain't faking my emotions. I'm being real with you. What you see is what you get. Keep it real. But the funny thing is, when you have an attitude, it's hard for someone to keep it real with you.
Yeah.
Why? Because if you bring it to their attention, they're going to get angry about it.
Yeah.
You know, you have people walking on eggshells. They got to, oh, hey, keep it down. You wake him up. You're going to summon the dragon. You know, unleash the crowd. I wouldn't say that. Well, maybe you can say it, but I wouldn't see it that way. But you know what? Maybe just don't say it. Because he's doing well, and if you bring that up, it's gonna, yeah.
Come on.
We can feel this way because people just, it makes you uncomfortable.
Yep.
Who wants to keep it real with someone who's emotionally violent?
Ooh.
I believe that a bad attitude is a sin that is felt.
Yeah. Oh my.
You don't have to speak it. You can be expressing something, but your attitude will always communicate something much louder than what you're speaking.
Wow.
There's been times when I'm talking to my wife, and I'm just having a good conversation with her, and she's like, "Are you mad at me?" I'm like, "Honey, we're not talking about that right now. I'm told we're talking about her, but you seem angry." I'm like, "Okay, back to the conversation. But are you angry? Yes or no?" I'm a little frustrated. Okay, because I can tell. I'm like, it's hard to talk to somebody when you're not in a good place.
Yeah. Come on.
Because they're getting a whole nother message. It's like you can't really have two conversations at the same time. But two people are talking to you, you're like, oh, one person, then you.
Yeah.
All right, now you. That's how it is when you're speaking, but your emotions are saying something completely different.
Come on.
Come on, Marvell.
Come on, Marvell.
What an attitude says is that there's something deeper in you.
Yeah.
You know, we gotta learn how to control our heart. Because our heart, God has given us authority.
Yeah.
We control our heart does not control us.
Come on.
My first point is the danger of a bad attitude. Turn with me to Romans chapter 12. You guys still with me here?
Yeah,
In Romans chapter 12. And verse 1.
Come on, bro.
It says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." You know, right here he says, in view of God's mercy, you see His mercy. Okay, in view of that. It says, offer your bodies as living sacrifices. You know, I need to lift up church. Because I think the church is great at like calling people to be sold out.
Yes. Come on.
You know, what you see, it is what you get, but it goes a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on.
You're in a room full of people who have given up things that others would die for.
Yeah.
But they've sacrificed it. They've made themselves a living sacrifice, which is incredible because that's what really makes it spiritual. It says that this is your spiritual act of worship. You guys with me here?
Yes.
Come on.
But what's interesting about it is it also says, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You know, I got a question for you. What patterns of the world have you conformed to? You know, one of the things that, I realize is that if you can disciple people on like little things, you can teach and correct people on little things, but what's best is to disciple patterns.
Yeah.
It's you confront patterns.
Yeah.
Because a person is, let's say if a person's late. They come and they're late. This is the first time they're late. You just hound on them. You don't do that. It's kind of like you wouldn't swat a fly with a hammer. You know what I'm saying? It's just not wise. That's just not wise. Now somebody comes in here and they walk in and they're late. What happened? You gotta find out what's going on. Is everything all right? You want to seek some understanding. You know what I mean? However, when it's a pattern, now there's reason to confront that issue.
Yeah.
Come on.
Why? Because it's not just an inconvenience or one-time thing. You now know it's a part of them.
Yeah.
It's in their character. It's something that they are. Now, if we think about that, what are our patterns?
Yeah.
To find out about your Savior, like, I don't really know. Understand who you are by following the patterns.
Yeah.
Patterns teach us things at a very young age. It's the first thing that a child can identify with is a pattern.
Yeah.
But they can identify the good patterns
Yeah.
and the bad ones too.
Yeah.
What are the bad patterns? Do you get frustrated very easy? Another question is, how long does it take for you to react badly? What do you have to go through for you to have a bad reaction? They feel like, oh, you know, the day actually was going very well until that happened. Ruined my entire day. Thank you very much. You're like, life was good until you came into it, until you did that. No. It got to be a little different than that. Life has to be good always because Jesus is good always.
Amen.
But what do you have to go through for you to have a bad reaction? Do you lose your patience when people aren't getting things done when you want them done?
Right, Marvell.
Do you tell people that they don't love you the first time you come into some conflict with that individual?
Wow.
Where a person has to, like, honestly say all good things and do all good things in order for you and that person's relationship to work. As soon as a bad thing comes, you're like, you don't love me and I knew it.
Wow.
Just like everybody else. Nobody's ever loved me, it's fine.
Wow.
You know, nobody's ever really been there for me. I've done everything on my own, it's fine. Like, do people have to walk on eggshells?
Wow.
Like, what does it take? What does it take? You know, we have to understand these things. You know, there's a few things that make people react. When they get a little too busy.
Yeah.
When they're under a little too much pressure.
Yep.
Funny thing, my dad used to say this to me and my little brothers. He said, pressure will either bust pipes or make diamonds.
Wow.
You know, it does both. Is will you come out shining?
Wow.
What does pressure do to you?
Come on, good question.
What about how many inconveniences you have to go through for you to break? How much sleep do you have to miss out on for you to just have a bad mood?
Grandchildren.
Like, oh, her eyes are a little red. She probably didn't sleep today. You just want to, like, stay away from the person. What about how much food? I mean, how long do you have to go without eating
Oh, come on.
for you to have a bad attitude? Some of you guys are dropping your faces like, oh. I mean, it's true. There's even a word. What do they call it?
Angry.
So now this is interesting. The world, now this is what we got to remember. Cute little word. I don't know if you guys ever seen those Sneakers commercials
Yeah.
where somebody's grumpy and they're like, she just needs a Sneakers. Give him a Snickers. A Snickers. I probably need to eat, huh? He just needs a Snickers. Give him the Snicker, and then they go back to normal. It's like, it's all right, buddy. You're back to normal.
Come on.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that we got to understand God did not coin this phrase. God did not make that word hangry. We did. So if you can go a couple hours without a meal and you're grumpy, what happens when you fast?
Come on.
I mean, and fast actually is supposed to make you more spiritual, and sometimes we can get a little more worldly. They're like, I haven't ate. I'm sorry, you're a bit too loud. What do you think Jesus responded that way? No. What's your pattern? And where did you get it from? You know, bad company does corrupt good character.
Yes.
We have to watch who we follow.
Yes.
Because they're not always good examples for us. Who are the spiritual role models in your life? We have to know who they are.
Me?
You know, I think sometimes we dismiss the things that we react to without dealing with them.
Yep.
My second point is quiet attitudes. Turn with me to Mark chapter 3.
Come on.
Is this helping you guys?
Yeah.
Come on, bro. In Mark chapter 3.
Come on.
It really is.
You know, Jay actually read this passage. I was like, whoa. The funny thing about Jay, he actually leads some really good Bible studies. Like,
Yeah, he does.
afterwards, I'll just be watching him. You know, I'm like, oh. It's kind of like, like when you're a little kid and your favorite TV show on,
Yes.
you don't want to sit in the back of the room. You get super close.
Yeah.
And Jesus be going in, you know, I was like, oh. And then afterwards, he always asks, you have anything to say? You just stumped the panel. Like, you just that was really good. It's a great thing to learn from.
Amen.
In Mark chapter 3, verse 1. Another time he went into the synagogue and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal. To see if he would heal them on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Now right here, Jesus is up and he sees someone with a little shriveled hand, and they know he's there. But instead of trying to help the man or give him a solution, they sit back and they want to know, what is Jesus going to do? So then Jesus asked him a question. He says, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or evil? To save life or to kill?" What he's doing is he's measuring their spirituality. You know, because sometimes people have a very sinful reaction to something very good. You know, this is why a lot of people don't want to come to church, because they're fearful they're going to ask me for too much money. The truth of the matter is, without that money, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
We wouldn't have this. We wouldn't have a facility to meet in. These people, honestly, let me tell you something. What got me to Milwaukee wasn't just because my family was here, although that is a great plus.
Yeah.
It was because somebody sacrificed, and I have no idea what they had to do to get that money.
Right.
Come on.
But if people don't sacrifice money, then the gospel will come to a halt.
Yeah.
We have to change our way of thinking when it comes to these things.
Right.
Come on. So Jesus asked them a question. What do they do? Do they speak? Do they all speak at once?
No.
They remain silent. No, sometimes we shut down. And we feel like it's all right. You got to ask yourself, when you shut down, when you say that word, once again, here's another phrase that we've made, not Jesus.
Wow.
So when you shut down, what's actually shutting down? Do you fall asleep? No. What shuts down? Your heart.
Stop listening.
You stop giving. You can't give anymore. You can't love anymore. You can no longer be joyful. You can no longer have self-control. Because guess what? It's out of your control.
Yeah.
What happens? You're no longer tender. You're no longer faithful. You just shut down. Now, we can be a little passive when this happens. But let's find out what Jesus feels towards this.
Come on.
He says in verse 5, he looked around them in anger, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. So when we shut down, Jesus gets angry. When we just remain silent and we can't speak any longer. What if Jay did that?
Wow.
Our leader, the minister of the church, father of the church.
Right.
What if they did this? And when he was meeting up with people, and he sat there, and he's like, Davey, sit down with me, trying to help me with my marriage. And Jay tried to bring something very kind out of his heart, bring something in, and he shows me a scripture. And then I don't have a good response. So I'm like, no, it ain't fair. I call this discipleship time for my wife. You're over here ganging up on me. What is this stuff?
Come on.
And I give Jay a response he doesn't like. And Jay's just like, you know what? It's fine. It's all right. If you think best, then you disciple your marriage, and we'll see how that works. Him and Barb walk out the house, and that's it. We meet up again. And then, you know, he disciples me, he says something that I don't like, and I have a reaction. He's like, I'm not dealing with this again. Every time with you. What if he did that? We will stop growing.
Right.
Come on.
But the question is that your reaction? Do you have the same strength as Jay? And now here's the funny thing. Jay is not Jesus.
That's right.
But how is he able to deal with it? Because of Jesus.
Yeah.
His attitude is different.
Yeah.
So who are you drawing your strength from to get through things?
Yeah.
Come on.
We can't say that we shut down. Jesus gets angry at that stuff. So when it happens to you, even though your husband or your best friend or your roommate might be understandable, Jesus is angry. And it says right here, it also says he's deeply distressed. So he's not just distressed, he's deeply distressed.
Yep.
What happened when you have deep hurts? It goes on for a while.
Yeah.
It stews like a crock pot. Jesus right here, he says he was deeply distressed, so he felt deep about it. That means we need to gain a deep conviction.
Yeah.
If Jesus has a deep reaction and a deep feeling towards it, we need to gain a deep conviction towards it. Are you guys with me here?
Yes.
You know, I honestly believe that we can grow. Turn me to James chapter 4.
Come on.
No, the other day, it's very interesting. I have some sin to confess.
Ooh.
Surely not.
In James chapter 4, and this is in verse 7. In James 4, verse 7. It says, submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Come near to God, and he will come near to you. Now, this is a great passage right here.
Come on.
It says, submit yourselves then to God. But one of the amazing things it says is, resist the devil, and he will do what? He will flee.
Yep.
You know, my dad, when I was 11 years old, I was having some thoughts that were like disturbing me. Like it'll make it hard for me to like go to sleep at night. I'd be like, you know, little kids, when they think something they don't want to think, they start like squinting down. And it just was unbearable.
Wow.
So I go upstairs and I talk to my dad, and I'm like, Dad, and I'm crying because I'm embarrassed. And I was like, Dad, I don't know why I'm thinking the things that I'm thinking.
What were you thinking?
So, it's great that you asked. So I watched the movie. And it was a little movie, don't remember the title. There's a bunch of little boys in the movie. And they had they did a crime and they all went to jail. And then when they go to they go to jail, they go to this little detention center, and all the guards are abusing these little boys sexually. And it scared me so much, I would be back and I was afraid of being molested or raped. That was like my biggest fear. I don't want anybody to defile me.
Yeah.
I was just afraid of that. It would just pop in my mind, and I started thinking like, you know, I don't know how to combat the thoughts, and I was like, I asked my dad, I said, I keep having these thoughts. Do I I was like, do I like men? My dad said, no, son. I had the same thoughts when I was young. And it put me at ease. Because my dad was like my hero. I was like, you went through the same thing? So when I thought about that, he told me this. He said, he was like, when that happens, say, Satan, I rebuke you. Resist him, and he will flee from you.
Come on.
And guess what? I would do it, and he would leave. The thoughts would leave. It would leave. It would be away from me. It brought me so much relief. I learned how to fight my thoughts as an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
So you guys can do it as grown adults.
Yep.
Yeah.
It says resist the devil and he will flee. So if we don't resist the devil, then it won't flee.
Right.
It doesn't leave us. You know, these are just my fears. And this is why I think it's important. You can't just show kids everything.
Yeah.
You know, because you show them the wrong thing and it'll strike a fear in them and I don't know what your fears are. They may not be what mine were. But whatever it is, you can fight it. And you can resist.
Come on.
Come on.
You know, resistance is how the devil stays out of our lives.
Yep.
Yes.
You know, I do not feel comfortable about Satan being in my heart, doing whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he likes to do it.
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
I don't feel good about that.
Come on.
You shouldn't either. So where's the resistance? Just resist, and he will flee. The Bible would not lie to you. People do.
Yes.
Right.
Come on, baby.
He's the only man.
He will flee. You know, the thing is there's these things I used to hear when I was younger. You know, my aunties, one time, like, we'd be all having, laughing. They're like drinking mimosas and stuff, a little devil eggs, and like having a good time. And we'll be around, and then one of my aunties, they'll say something that another one doesn't like, and out of nowhere, they're like, I gotta go. No, because I'm gonna snap. Or they'll be like, if I stay there, I'm gonna say something that's gonna hurt their feelings. So I'm gonna just pull it out. No, I just can't.
He would
And on one end, I'm like, okay, you know, that's discerning. You know what I mean? Like, you get the 4 C's of the future. Like, you know exactly where this is trending.
Right.
That's actually a good thing. Wouldn't you guys say?
Yeah.
Okay, this is good. But what isn't is that although they are discerning, the reason why they can't get through it is because they lack self-control.
Right.
So the thing is you can have discernment and not have any self-control.
Right.
Yeah. Come on.
People in the world actually do have some discernment.
Right.
I mean, I don't know about you, but the person that trained me at my job, they weren't a Christian. They just trained me. They would actually teach me what and what not to do. Like, that's not really a good idea. Maybe you should do this. Okay. And it would teach me. They had discernment.
Yeah.
However, they did not have self-control.
Right.
They were going off on everybody, yelling at everybody. People were quitting all the time. So even though they have discernment, they don't have self-control. As we get older, we'll be able to discern more and more of what's right and what's wrong. But self-control is what's going to get you to heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
I believe that a lack of self-control poses a greater threat than anything else to our salvation.
Come on.
Because people do whatever they please.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they can't control it.
Yep.
It just happened. It's because they don't have any resistance towards it.
Yep.
If we can gain some resistance, we can gain some control.
Yeah.
We have to gain some control over our lives.
Yeah.
Are you guys with me here?
Yeah.
You know, I honestly believe that this can happen. Think about all the things that you've overcome.
Yeah. Come
You don't have to
on.
think about all the good things.
Yep.
God moved in those areas.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is before you overcame it, you felt like you never could.
Right.
Because it was the biggest thing at the time.
Yeah.
But guess what? If you can overcome little things, you can overcome larger things.
Yeah.
Because the power of God doesn't run out.
Right.
We're resources. God is the source.
Yeah.
Turn with me to Galatians chapter 5.
Come on, bro. This is great.
Is this helping you guys?
Yes.
In Galatians chapter 5.
Come on, Marvell.
You know, my third point is the attitude of Christ.
Come on.
In Galatians chapter 5 and verse 22. It says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking, and enticing each other. You know, another thing is that I want to talk about when it comes to self-control. I think one thing that I've learned about myself, and this is when I was leaving, when I was moving from place to place in LA, when we left, we were a little beaten up. And there was something that I told my wife at the time. I said, you know, there's been couples that I look up to and I admire that are no longer here.
Wow.
Because of hurt.
Wow.
And the thing is I told her, I said, they don't deal with it. And I said, I think what happens is there are people, the people that get hurt, the wife feeds the husband and the husband feeds the wife.
Yeah.
So they can't really overcome it. Because if one tries to make a step towards overcoming, the husband might spew some bitterness. And then it goes back into the heart. And then it's a cycle.
Yeah.
and they corrupt and defile one another.
Right.
And I told her that's not going to be us.
Amen.
Like, we have to overcome the hurts.
Yep.
We have to. And I also want to say, when there's things in the church that you're dealing with, when people hurt you, this is not a perfect church. But we do have a perfect God. I believe what distinguishes us
Yep.
from different churches is not necessarily our good looks.
Oh.
Or not, at least for Jay. Yeah.
Come on, Jay.
And Shane.
Come on, Jay.
And Frankie.
Hold him in.
But for the rest of us, Marvell. And Marvell, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for bringing me into the group. One thing that distinguishes us is how we deal with sin.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. Come on.
It's not that we're a sinless church. I'm going to be honest with you right now.
Okay.
It's that we deal with sin very different from other people.
Yes.
Other people, they don't want to know what the sins are in your life because they say that's between you and God. That person doesn't really love.
Right.
We have to know what the sins are to help the person overcome them.
Absolutely.
We deal with it very differently.
Come on.
But the way when we're hurt with people, you can't go to one person and tell them, this is what happened to me, this is how it's hurt. Go to the next person and tell them, I'm over it now, but this is what hurt me, this is how it happened. And go to the next person. You're cross-pollinating. You're like a bee.
Right.
You're busy. And that can't be it. You have to speak to people with faith. Let them feel that you've healed from whatever you've gone through, not that there is an open wound.
Right. Come on.
You know, right here it says the fruit of the Spirit. It doesn't say the fruits. The interesting thing about that is that it's one fruit.
Come on. Break it down.
So when you have the fruit of the Spirit, you should have them all.
Yep.
If there's any way that we're lacking one of these things, then something is hindering the Spirit of God.
Yes.
Something is hindering it. You never see oranges growing on an apple tree. You just see apples growing on an apple tree.
Right.
You don't see apples growing on an orange tree. You just see oranges growing on an orange tree.
Yeah.
But so it's not like you have this one big tree and these little different things that joy, there's patience, there's fruit. No, it's not. It doesn't work like that. It's like you just have joy, but you have no self-control and nothing else.
Wow.
Then what kind of spirit do you have in you? You know, what it is all those things. It's like taking all the fruits that you love, the fruit of the loom, and you putting them all in one fruit.
Yeah.
It's like putting all the good things that you love about fruit in one apple.
It's true.
That's the Spirit of God. You get it all.
Yes.
That's what's amazing about the Spirit.
Come
You
on.
already have what you need to overcome.
Come on.
Now it's just about, do you want to get well?
Come
Do you
on.
want to overcome? You know, Philippians chapter 2.
Come on.
I want to lift up somebody.
Come on.
I'm ready.
And I'm sorry, Grady, today that won't be used. In Philippians chapter 2. In chapter 14. It says, do everything without complaining and arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure children of God, without fault in a crooked and depraved generation, in which you shine like stars in the universe, as you hold out the word of life, in order that I might boast on the day of Christ, that I did not run or labor for nothing. Right here it says, do everything without grumbling. Do everything without complaining. We complain, as a society, as a people, we complain about everything.
Right. We do.
When we're tired, it's not enough for us to be tired. We got to say we're tired. Oh, I'm tired. When we're hungry, we can't just be hungry. We got to say, oh, I'm starving. Like Marvin. I'm hungry. We have to, everything. Oh, I got to do laundry. Oh, I have to do chores. Oh, I have to call this person.
Yep.
Oh, they're calling again. I need to answer them. Oh, I got to meet with this person. I got to go to work in 5 minutes. It's like, you know it's going to happen. Why complain about it?
Right. Right.
I want to live up, brother. I want to live up, Richard. You know, it's very interesting. Last night, Richard contacts, we have a little men's group chat, and he contacts, he says, is anyone free to speak? And I'm like, I'm working on this lesson. But you know what? I just texted back I commented and I said, what's going on? Richard says, calls me up, and he's like, I'm struggling right now. I just came from work. I left work, but I was there. At 9 o'clock, I was supposed to clock out, but a huge line comes in, and I turn around and I say, well, I guess I'm staying. And Richard says, I get the line out the door, and after that, he's like, well, I guess now I'm free to go. And he leaves, and then his boss says something to him. He says, you don't have to complain, you can just leave. He's like, I already stayed to get the line out. I mean, if I didn't want to stay, I wouldn't have stayed. I actually could have clocked out.
Right.
He was like, I stayed. And then so Richard said, I was a little frustrated because I stayed and I denied myself, but you know what? She said, I sat there and I breathed and I said, I'm actually going to go back and apologize.
Wow.
Richard gets his shoes, he goes back, and he apologizes to the man. He says, you know what? I apologize, I'm sorry. And then the guy snaps at him and he says, no, just leave.
Wow.
And Richard is like, at this point, I'm like, all right, I'm out. So he's leaving, and then he's like, and now I'm just like, I'm struggling. And I was like, man, that was very commendable of you, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and getting open about it.
Yeah.
But I showed him this passage, and I told him, right here it says, do everything without complaining. And Richard's like, I was complaining, I was cracking a joke. And I said, well, that's the same thing I would have done. Because I like cracking jokes. But just because we make light of it, doesn't mean it's not an overflow of the heart.
Wow.
Come on.
Because the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks.
Yeah.
So I was just like, even though it was like to you, and I would have laughed too, he had a reaction.
Yeah.
And what does it say? It says, do everything without complaining and arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure. So I was like, even though your heart might have been pure, you still weren't blameless. Because you just got to set a good example.
Yeah.
He was like, that really helped. That really helped. But see, the thing is how do we stay blameless before people when we just learn how not to complain about things? God destroyed people for grumbling.
Wow.
Come on.
We got to have the same conviction. It also says not complaining keeps us pure.
Wow.
So even though you're not thinking, I'm going to store this in my heart for later, the heart naturally does that. Our hearts are naturally clingy. They'll take in whatever you give it. So what are you giving your heart?
Wow.
We have to be wise about what we say and how we say it. And sometimes you don't need to speak it out your mouth, but you'll do it in other ways by just thinking it.
Yeah.
The heart still hears that.
Yeah.
You can't hide anything from it. So it's because you can't hide anything from it, you just have to guard it.
Yes.
Write this down. Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. It is the wellspring. 1 Peter 2, we'll close out here.
Come on, baby.
Come on, Marvell.
It is the wellspring.
Come on, dude.
1 Peter 2.
Come on, Marvell.
Verse 13. It says, submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among men, whether to the king as the supreme authority, or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong, and to commend those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish men. Live as free men, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as servants of God. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the brotherhood of believers. Fear God and honor the king. Slaves, submit yourselves to the master with all respect. Do not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. For it is commendable if a man bears up under the pain of unjust suffering because he is conscious of God. But how is it to your credit if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? For if you suffer for doing good and you endure it, this is commendable before God. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. When they hurled insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, so that we might die to sin and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed.
Wow.
For you were like sheep going astray, but now you have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. And the church said,
Amen.
This is a profound passage. It says, don't just submit to the supreme authority. Sometimes when people are like, you're not the one in charge, they feel like they can't submit to the person.
Wow.
Whether they're the Bible talk leader, the person in charge, the evangelist, or the bishop or the deacon, doesn't matter. You need to submit to every authority. They might not have an authority over you, but is there authority? We have to be willing to submit.
Yep.
Submit.
You know, another thing is, it also says that Christ suffered for who? It says for you. He didn't just suffer just to suffer. He suffered for us.
Yes.
But it says he did it, leaving us an example that you should follow in his steps. So God suffered so that we would be an example. We disconnect ourselves from that example because we say Jesus got through it because he was God. And that's not necessarily true. Jesus got through it because he relied on God.
Right.
He relied on the Spirit of God.
Yep.
Why did he become, if that was the case, if we were going to keep pulling the fact that Jesus came down as man, then he would have just came down in his glory.
Yep.
And then he really would have been unrelated. But he came down as man so that we would follow his example.
Amen.
He made no insults.
That's right.
He didn't retaliate. He didn't say something in his heart. If they're late, he didn't call them lazy.
Right.
That's an insult. You know what I mean? It's insulting their character.
Right.
Jesus, it says he made no threats. He entrusted himself to he who judges justly. You know, I want to challenge you guys to simply follow the example that's been set.
Yep.
You know, the challenge is to jot down any hurt that you've gone through. Because what God does, I learned this from Keon. God, what he'll do, so Keon, he went to a surgery, and what they had to do is they had to re-break his leg in order for it to heal the right way. And for us, when we react to things, it doesn't really show that we've been through anything. Because children react to things because they don't understand life. They haven't been through anything. You're like, they're immature. We have to display that we've went through things, but we got through it and we learned something from it.
Yep.
What God will do is, he loves a broken and contrite spirit. So he'll send us through everything we went through and worse so that we might break to just learn the lesson we should have learned back then.
Right.
So instead, what we do is we simply need to jot down what we went through to find out where the pain is. And just learn the lesson. What lesson did God want me to learn? And then after that, look at 1 Peter 3, 21 through 22. And what it says is that we made a pledge of a good conscience.
Yep.
And that way we can learn how to honor that pledge. When we got baptized, we made a pledge of a good conscience. What a pledge is just honoring that we're simply going to protect our conscience. When you learn the lesson, then you protect the conscience. Because that's what Jesus did. He learned the lessons as they came. And now he's the greatest example for us. And to God be all the glory. At this time, we're going to take communion. So let's say a prayer.